Let's get down to business. Recently I just made a video about the Resident Evil Revelations 3 leaks involving Rebecca Chambers being the main protagonist and Leon S. Kennedy being the side piece, loser scrub, good for nothing that shouldn't be there. And I would like to discuss Resident Evil Revelations 1 because I did not. I made a video a long time ago. Resident Evil Revelations 2 story is whack. Link is in the description. One of my very first videos, so just my takes a long time ago. The majority of those takes still stand, but I will elaborate more on what I was trying to say in that video in this video. But first, let's talk about Resident Evil Revelations 1. So I believe it's the far superior Revelations. It includes Jill Valentine looking very similar to how we've seen her before. Chris Redfield, this is the best example of them being able to just take his assets from another game and just make him look the same. His face is kind of looking a little inverted for some reason. I really don't know why. His eyes are really getting really close together. But I am fine with this. This Chris looks very close to what Resident Evil 5 Chris looked like, and I'm just satisfied with that. I'm fine. I also love the fact that there are new characters that have nothing to do with who we've seen before, and they're fine. They fit well, except the anime people. I'll tell you about the anime people later, but let's first talk about Keith. I love Keith. I don't know why Keith and Quint are no longer here. Keith is one of the only black characters in Resident Evil, canonically, to still be alive. So as far as I know, he didn't kill over from no heart attack or anything. He's still alive. Quint is very funny. He's very cool. I really do like him. He's like some nerdy guy, but I kind of don't like the fact that he was like freaking stalking Jessica. I hate when people use being a stalker loser or taking advantage of women as like freaking comedic relief. In almost everything you can find, almost any form of media, you can find the character like, okay, here's an example. 7 Deadly Sins anime. They use Meliodas as a freaking comedic relief character by groping on women who don't want him. The women that want him, he doesn't grope on. Interestingly enough, consent is just negative to them, and they think that being sexually aggressive and assaulting women is funny. That's why Quint, he was also shamed by Keith, so I'm okay with the shaming. If there's shaming, if there's don't do that, if we are going to do what we do as a society and try to figure out something, trying to figure a social bar, let's raise the social bar, please, okay? Let's raise it up and not be below HE double hockey stick. Thank you. But that's basically all I have to say about him. Parker, he is such a cool dude. He's a real nice guy. There's no hidden anything having to do with him. He's a really good person. If I were to pick anybody other than Chris as a good person, I don't know why people hate on Chris. I really do think people hate on Chris, guys in particular, is because they're jealous of him. Like, they really are jealous. Like, they freaking want to be like Chris, but Leon seems more like a person that's more like a human being, but not really, because like I said, he's a superhero now. He's not as built as Chris is, as they made him. And I think that's hilarious. Like, it's hilarious. We can all laugh about it. We can all have a great time about it, but I like Chris better than Leon. Sorry. Parker would be the next person. I would rather see a game, literally a whole game, made with Parker as the main character than Leon. That should tell you a lot about how Parker is. Now, before we get into the story, let me talk about the anime people. Jessica, I would consider her an anime person. I really did not like the fact that she was a simp. She looked ridiculous, grabbing onto Chris and goo eyes and all that. It's really gross. Like, you either shoot your shot or you keep your shot in your pocket. And that's what I say. Like, no, none of this sly stuff unless you guys are already together and you just want to do that just to keep the romance going, you know. Next person, Rachel. She's very short-lived, and even the trailer, the demo, had us playing as Rachel trying to get through the Zenobia or whatever, the freaking boat or whatever that she was on. I don't know if that's the Zenobia. There's 2 different boats and I can't remember which boat's which. I'm doing this by memory, okay? I'm doing basically all of this by memory. I really liked Rachel. I was upset what happens to her. Spoiler. This is a spoiler review of revelations and everything, look in the description. Always read the description. Reading is key. Always read what you sign as well. Rachel dies, and we barely get to see her, but she's a really cool character. Unfortunately, they can't keep women clothed. And yeah, okay, we can play that whole game where there's like, oh, the demographic's male, so we're appealing to males. Well, make your game good. Maybe you can make your game good. I don't recall ever seeing any naked women on Call of Duty. I don't recall. Someone please tell me if I'm wrong. I'd love to be proven wrong. But even those games aren't really that great, but they're selling. They're doing something, and they're not like making everyone naked. Freaking Rachel did not have to be freaking completely unclothed. She's an operative. She works with freaking chemicals and whatnot. It's just stupid. It makes the girls look really stupid in hindsight. So stop doing that. Stop making them have their breasts all out and stuff when they're operatives. Hunk does not have his penis out. And I promise you, I would enjoy that very much. But just because you enjoy something doesn't mean you have to put it somewhere where it doesn't belong. You don't have no penis in a library. You don't have no like freaking vagina out in a library. Stop. And if you aren't going to stop, if you aren't going to keep busting these breasts in my face when these women are supposed to be around Ouroboros and things wiggling around and whatnot and viruses, then you need to have Hunk's penis out. I don't care if I see his face. I need penis out. Thank you. Ramon is one of the worst characters in Resident Evil history. I would put him right next to Irving. I would. And I'll explain to you why. And I actually do think that Ramon is, despite how I'm saying his name, he is Anglo-Saxon of the Caucasus Mountain. I have no idea why, for some reason, every single person in this game is white. Except Keith, and he's light-skinned. I don't understand. They're not even Asian. They're white. You know how I know? Because freaking Parker has some Icelandic or some accent from some... He's white, basically. He's white. And Ramon, he's not even post-colonialism Spaniard. He's just white. Just like Jessica is white. Ramon was really like pointless. He's not even in the game until like the middle, almost the middle we see him. Like if they wanted to red herring Parker, which is what they do, they did a poor job. They did a poor job at like, this is a whodunit. I really like Resident Evil Revelations 1 because it goes back to the roots of Resident Evil, like finding certain things and having to unlock things and whatnot. For the most part, it still goes on that linear path that they started doing with Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6. But we don't talk about 6. 6 was gross. But like I said, not everyone in this thing had to be white, and there's only one black guy. And I don't even consider Keith and Quint anime people, even though I kind of maybe would say Quint was, but Keith isn't, only for the mere fact that he seems like he's not just there. The anime people seem to be just there. Like they were an afterthought. I really do believe they were. And I don't necessarily know why. But that's basically all the anime people. The rest of the people I'll talk about later. Like I said in my other video before, if you guys haven't seen my Resident Evil Revelations 2 is whack video, link is in the description. It's very old. It has a lot of takes in there that I don't necessarily agree with anymore. I will elaborate later on them when I talk about Revelations 2. This is going to be pretty long. Let's go. Let's start talking about this story. Okay? A city floating on water called Terra Grigia is destroyed by a terrorist attack. This city was sustainable by solar power. The terrorists, Veltro or something, I think it's Il Veltro. The terrorists, El Veltro, were the ones who basically destroyed Terra Grigia. I forgot why. I know it has something to do with like, oh, we don't like this. We don't like, even though they weren't really doing, I don't know what they were doing, but like, play the game. I'm thinking about playing the game because it's really good, except a few things. They had to nuke the city with sunlight to destroy the BOW hunters, another enemy we never see in the movies. We've seen lickers about 1 billion times, not a single hunter. Where are the hunters at? Welcome to Raccoon City. Are you gonna have hunters? Do you even know what a hunter is? But back to track, okay? The FBC, the Federal Bioterrorism Commission, was disbanded after that whole situation. Basically, this thing was the American government who started this. And they were like, you know what? We're going to disband. BSAA is the Bioterrorism Security. I think it's like a Assessment Alliance or something. They are connected to the United States of America and the UN, which means they can go globally, while the FBC could only do things like American territories. And I do believe Terra Gricia was. But a year after that, Revelations 1 starts, okay? So Jill gets to be hero. Yay! We're gonna save Chris and Jessica. Jessica is a woman simp who keeps throwing herself at Chris instead of saying, I like you, want to go on a date, and getting rejected because he likes Jill, even though we never get to see them have any form of PDA at all. But, yeah. So we do that with good guy Parker. Like, I really don't know where he's from, and I'm not really going to look it up because I don't care. But I know he's from some mountain. I know it's a Caucasus mountain. I know he's not from freaking Asia. His last name looked like Lugigliani or something. Looked like a noodle, so he probably from Italy. What's up with them and putting, like, Italy up in here a lot? Like, Veltro, like Greyhound or something in Italian. And then freaking Excella is, like, Italian or something, even though she's based in Africa. Interesting. And then this is a Japanese franchise, so, like, why are y'all doing this? Please, like, grab a hold of your ethnic roots. Put more ethnic people in here. But when people animate things, just a little side note here. When people animate things, they do so with the greatest intention. Do not assume that things happened by mere happenstance when you animate it. Like I said in my previous video that I posted, you can animate anything you want. It doesn't have to be real. It doesn't have to look like anyone. They think the default color of skin is white. When they make things look like other people, it's because they're lazy and they want to use the assets. They can use mocap or whatever. They've been using mocap since Resident Evil freaking 5. And that's the reason why they're still doing it, because they're lazy. They don't want to do any more than they have to. And I don't know if that's something to do with money. Actually, I know that's exactly what it has to do with. They want to shorten the amount of money they have to spend on the freaking crap so they can get more money out of the finished product. Because simps for Capcom will buy anything they have, and then you tell us who criticize their stuff, oh, you guys are gloom and doom. Oh, just let people enjoy things. You guys are so toxic. And yeah, some of them are toxic. Some Resident Evil fans are toxic, but a lot of the toxic people are the ones who are still in favor for everything that happens. Just saying. But back to business. The last ping that freaking Jill got from Chris and his whereabouts leads them to the Queen Zenobia, I think. There's like Queen Sazdarnia and Queen Zenobia. There's like 4 different boats up in here, and I don't remember. I'm gonna just call them all the Zenobia, just from here on out. So go look those boats up, because I don't know. I may put them in the description, but freaking I don't. So they go to the Queen Zenobia, and it's a trap. Oh, wow. Jill thinks she's gonna be the hero, right? You thought in my voice you heard that you thought you were gonna be the hero, but you ain't. You captured. So you're freaking captured, but guess what? Jill's the one that actually gets them out. Parker's there for the ride. He's cool. He's whatever. But this whole trap situation is right where this story gets to be bad. They should have put a lot more thought and effort into how to get all these people into one place, because the reason why they're captured is because the guy at the end is trying to get them all in one place. And knowing what we know at the end of this, when I tell you the people who are the traitors, it makes no sense. This part makes no sense. This part makes absolutely no sense. They could have killed them here. They could have killed him here. We wouldn't have a story, of course not. But like I said, you cannot tell me that, oh, we wouldn't have a story if you did XYZ. That means that's a plot hole. You need to fix that plot hole, because it's freaking as big as the Grand Canyon. A baby would be like, goo goo gaga, this doesn't make sense, goo goo. Like, honestly, I just want to let you guys know this is dumber than dumb. So they're in there with the keys. They get to escape, but the freaking Uzis are everywhere. Uzis are the zombies in this game. Instead of eating you, they suck your blood with this leech thing. It's really cool. I like them. So they escape. They're still on that freaking ship. Because this game is following the whodunit format of the storytelling situation, murder mystery, Parker was on my radar at this point, pun intended, for the inside job man. Right away, even though we don't even see the people that are the ones that are, but obviously, if you just start taking away the people that we know, Jill, Chris, it only leaves the people we don't know. And more than half of them are the guys that freaking are against our main character. But at this point, you are to assume Parker is the one you shouldn't trust. So at this point, let me tell you guys, the game follows 3 storylines plus 1 unplayable storyline. We've got Jill and Parker at first. We've got Chris and Jessica, and we've got Keith and Quint. Keith and Quint are kind of on the side. We go back and forth between them. Basically, they're kind of like the side story, and we're supposed to assume that they die at one point. There's a lot of like cliffhanger things that if they're told episodically, it makes sense. But if you play the game just beginning to end, it's kind of dumb and it's kind of annoying. Like, oh, tune in next week. Like, it's got that format, even though it's kind of like the same format of Resident Evil 4. I think that's another reason why I'm annoyed with Resident Evil 4, because I didn't like that. And I don't necessarily think it's bad. I just think it doesn't belong in Resident Evil, because it's kind of like a movie. You're playing a movie. That's why they had the camera angles a certain way. That, and they had to make do with their freaking cinematography. The freaking, what it looks like, the graphics were terrible. So they had to one up the scariness by putting angles to where you could barely see the character. Freaking Code Veronica, you can't see nobody, you just hear moaning, and you gotta keep shooting down a hallway until it dies. But back to what I was saying. The side story that I told you about that we don't play as is O'Brien's point of view. And we kind of see O'Brien's point of view through Keith and Quint's point of view. And that's kind of the reason why they're the ones that figure out the story. But I think it's another reason why we see them solve the mystery is because Jill and Chris are divided in between two teams until the end, where Jill and Chris are on the same team, and I love that so much. Oh my goodness, that's like the one time we see them work together since Resident Evil 1. So if they were going to follow that story, that whole situation where Revelations, like the way it is, if they were to do that, that's why I kind of understand why Revelations 2 followed Claire. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't have followed Claire, but what I am saying is that it should have had Jill in it as well. Why did we could have had Barry, but Barry should have came with Jill. Like, Jill should have been in there somewhere somehow, even if Chris wasn't, because I don't know why. I do know why guys hate on Chris. A lot of guys hate on Chris, like I said, because his stature, his position seems unattainable. Like, to have a cool sister, cool friend in Jill, and confidant, and then they made him really muscular. That made a lot of guys hate him. Ironically, there are reasons that guys like and hate muscular men or want to be like muscular men, but that's just my hypothesis on that. Not getting into psychology right now. Back to the story. The ship aspect of the game feels like home. Such a wonderful, creepy, tight space setting. Kind of makes me wonder why people hate on this game and not on Revelations 2 when it was a lot worse. I cannot wait to talk about that. Well, I think I have an idea of why a lot of people hate this game, and it involves 3 things, and I'll disclose them as they occur. One was how they tricked Jill and Parker on that freaking thing, because literally they go into a room and it's like Chris, but it's not Chris. It's like muscular Chris from Resident Evil 5, and his head comes off and it's a fake. Like, it wasn't even like a dead body, it was literally fake. And that's exactly like I said, when that dude at the end could have killed Jill and Parker. And maybe, I don't know, like, they had to keep them alive because A, Parker was a red herring to the inside job man, and B, Jill can't die at this point because this was before, I do believe this happens before 5, because she's not blonde. Yeah, you can dye your hair, but they wouldn't do that. If we see Jill blonde, it's obviously after 5, unless it's explicitly told to us in the title or in the story's context. But we cannot see when this occurs just based on the context of Revelations 1. Maybe you can make a hypothesis, but it's never directly told to us. Maybe they give us a date or something, and that's the only time, but they don't say specifically. They don't keep talking about it either. Like I said, the zombies are called oozes. They can travel in small spaces, most of them, because there's this Mayday dude that can't slip through the cracks of a door. You gotta open it. But they're quick for the most part. And after they release themselves, this is where we meet mutated Rachel, breasts and all. She's very strong, and I wish we got more from Rachel before she died. Like, they should have, even though we got the beginning part, it's kind of like the demo, basically. We got to explore with her. It should have been a lot longer. Should have been the first part of the game. I hate when we get these little tiny things, but then the character in that situation was a part of the game. Literally in the aspect of Rachel only mattered as much as Lady Dimitrescu in Resident Evil 8. Let me just tell you that. So you don't really need her for the rest of the game. You don't need her, but I would have rather seen more of her than just get a little bit of her, for as long as they treated her like a character. I don't know. They even reference her like it's It's just crazy. So they learned the cruise ship is doubled as a moving laboratory. It wouldn't be Resident Evil without conspiracy and hidden labs. Leader of the FBC, Morgan, basically the big kahuna behind everything that happened, spoiler, was in cahoots with Veltro, those people that killed everyone in Terra Grigia. Because of course. And then he talks about Umbrella. Like, this is like I really don't care about Umbrella. Come and go. I'm fine with it. I'm not one of those people that are like, oh, let Umbrella die. I kind of was early on, but I'm honestly to the point where the only freaking consistency y'all can have is when you guys try to bring up Umbrella, and even then you struggle so hard. So freaking, like I said, you need to get some intern to play the games and tell you what's going on if you're not gonna even care. If you're just gonna look at money, Mr. Krabs, the least you can do is know your own lore. So, he had the ship decimated with the T Abyss virus. Basically, this game introduces the aquatic virus, the Abyss virus, which was discovered in fish that dive deep into the ocean. They mutated that Abyss virus with the T virus to create a very hostile host, forming the T Abyss virus as well. So, the T Abyss virus is basically the virus we're dealing with in this game. He, along with O'Brien, their boss, did all this cahooting to set up his people, and that's the second issue I have with this game. It's a tad convoluted, and if you are just coming in, it's as hard as just a regular person who knew about Kingdom Hearts and trying to connect 1 and 2 and 3 together. It's one game. That confusion that happened in Kingdom Hearts 3 had context, knew everything that was in Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, but all that confusion that occurred and accumulated in Kingdom Hearts 3 occurs in one game, Revelations 1. Literally, there's so much confusion. No one really can explain everything that happens, all the cahooting and all the people. It's just like O'Brien committed treason with extra steps. When if they wanted them dead, they could have killed them in that room, and then they could have told Chris, she's here and you need to get her, and then they could have killed her. Like, honestly. And yes, anyone could say, well, you could just put a bullet in the chamber and shoot the person, but it wouldn't be a movie, it wouldn't be a game, it wouldn't be a series without this and that and the other. And it's just like, don't give me that crap. Stop caping for Capcom. Just say that they did a oopsies, they did a they did a bad. Just say they did a bad and be on with it. And another thing, freaking Morgan didn't have to directly confront them. When I first saw this, I was like, okay, he just has this little thing, but he's literally watching them. He's literally watching them that entire time. That's why Morgan got arrested. Like, Albert Wesker, no one could be no villain other than Alexia came close to even being close to Albert Wesker's, I can't. The only grace I can give this story is the fact that Keith and Quint are kind of like these side story characters that should have gotten a lot more. They're kind of like just to cut up the monotony of the seriousness, because Jill's very serious in this game, Chris is very serious in this game. The only comedic relief we get is Keith and Quint. And it should have been spread across each group. Not saying that each person need to have a class clown on their team, but Parker's not that serious, but he kind of is a little. And let's not talk about Jessica. But Keith and Quint, who ultimately solve the case without Jill or Chris, basically make this whole thing worth watching, because they kind of explain, and by they I mean Quint. Keith doesn't necessarily explain, but he understands what's going on. He knows what's going on. He's cool. Where's Keith? Give me a game about Keith. Freaking forget about Leon. Literally, let's just amnesia it. Who's Leon? I know Keith. I know Parker. I know Jill. I know Rebecca. I know Chris. I know Claire. I know Barry. Who's Leon? But anyway, the third issue lies with the anime people, the moles, Jessica, and what's his name? Nemesis Face. I called him Nemesis Face because he does this face that if you take a screenshot of it, he literally looks like Nemesis. Ramon. Longtime allies of Parker, which also connects Parker to them. He knows, in the game, you see him interact with Raymond and Jessica a long time ago and whatnot, and they know each other. So that's what makes it seem like Parker's in on it, but he's not. Both kind of take the role Wesker had for Resident Evil 0 through Resident Evil 5, but no one will ever be able to fill his shoes. The only person who had a chance to fill his shoes, y'all killed in Revelations 2. The same game that you introduced her in, Alex Wesker. The one that everyone knew Alex was alive. People made unofficial trailers for Alex Wesker, and they thought he was a guy. And then it's cool because they made her a girl. And you literally take a bullet and shoot her. Literally. I'm not here for the whole body switching thing, especially since y'all didn't do it correctly. Makes no sense. I literally could strangle that girl. Like, she's a child. She does not have adult strength. And if she's going to mutate out and freaking mutate, there was no need for her to be in a child's body because that's not even strong enough to even sustain that. But whatever. I felt like Ramon and Jessica's roles were more like a callback to Wesker and Ada rather than their own brilliance. Even though it's a convoluted story that has a lot of extra steps that no one would ever be able to get away with, but they did. Like, still was strange. Jessica and Ramon are really connected to Tricell, and at this point, just based on that solely, RE0, RE3, and RE5 through Revelations 1 have more relevance to Resident Evil as a whole than Resident Evil 4 does. Just put that in your mind for a second. Let that simmer. Nothing that happened in Resident Evil 4 weighs heavily on anything that has to do with any other game. I just want you guys to know that and understand that. Because the sooner you guys realize that, the sooner you can enjoy Resident Evil 4 without saying it's worth anything. It's not worth gum on your shoe. I'm sorry to let you know. Nothing happens in Resident Evil. None of the enemies really matter. They don't hold no weight to nothing. It could have ended and no one really... The same thing that happened in Resident Evil 6 with Ada and Leon would have been the same because they knew each other from Resident Evil 2. I'm just saying... Literally, Revelations 1 connects to Resident Evil 5, a game that people only hate because the AI was bad. Like I said, if people are upset that the AI was bad for Resident Evil 5, then they should have had more friends to play with. Because I was fine. I always played online. I don't know about you. Maybe you couldn't afford Xbox Live and that's fine. But don't blame the AI for you not enjoying a game. When you could have played with your brother or your sister or your mom even. You could have given the controller to your mom or dad, but you didn't. You didn't. You decided to play alone. That's what you get. I hope Sheva killed you every time. Anyway, at this point in the story, the final act takes place in a sunken ship where they find old mole dude who captured Jill and Parker. Chris and Jill fight together. I do believe you play as Jill. And they fight a mutated Norman who is the best boss in Resident Evil history. This is what saves this game. Now, if the final boss was tragic and bad and easy to defeat, I would say this is one of the worst games of Resident Evil. And only because of those 3 things I told you about from the beginning. Like, it's convoluted story. The anime people made no sense being in here. And freaking, they could have killed everybody instantly without having all these extra steps. Everything else is fine. There are the nitpicks that I have, like Rachel not being a good enough character for me to even care. And the fact that she's just breasts to y'all. Like, she's literally nothing. Like, women are literally nothing to you but sexual objects. That's it. That's all you guys care about. And that's ridiculous. Like, freaking, you need to go talk to some therapists. You need therapy. This character is the best boss in Resident Evil history. Every boss on normal setting in every game cannot compare to the disappearing Norman. Like, Norman was the best boss. He was so hard to beat that when I first played the game, I did not beat the game. I didn't beat the game. I did not beat the game. When it first came out, and I do believe 2012, I couldn't beat the game. I was at the end, I couldn't. And it was like, I don't remember what setting I had it on, but I thought it was normal. And I had to wait until I was an adult to beat that game. I came back to it, I was like, hey, let me play this game because I knew I never beat it. And I literally beat it. And maybe it was because I was a kid, but guess what? I was defeating all the other things. I was killing everything else. No other game that I played, I had a hard time. Like, I didn't have half of a hard time as I did in that game in Resident Evil 8, fighting Miranda in her 50,000 forms. Like, y'all can come off Code Veronica and Alexia. She had 3 forms, and the first form was taken out by one freaking magnum shot to the forehead. Don't give me nothing. Yeah, she had all those freaking forms, but guess what? Those forms still were like cool. By the way, that noise in the background is my bearded dragon banging up against the glass. Now that we all know what happened in Revelations 1, let's look at the criteria to being a Resident Evil game that I have created, that I've been using since I've been talking about Resident Evil. Let's get right down to it. The 10 things that every Resident Evil needs. Number 1, horror. Ambiance, music, sound. Those were brilliant. I give this game a point for that because, oh my gosh, the music is so cool. And I can't believe really that people prefer Resident Evil Revelations 2 to 1. Even though that it was later and a lot of things were changed, you never got a character that was just useless in Resident Evil Revelations 1. Each character that was with you, aside from that mission where Quint had to like decipher something and Keith was the only one fighting, and you basically had to do that thing where you had to protect your partner, there was no really a time where your character wasn't shooting as well. But in Revelations 2, you are hindered with not only a child character that can do absolutely nothing but point and cry, but you have this almost adult character who is, I don't know how old she is, she might be 18 or 17 for all I know, Moira, who everyone loves to talk about, oh, she's so cool, oh my god, she got a stick. She had a freaking stick that broke on impact. She's basically like worse Chloe Price. The only reason why I say worse is because freaking at least Chloe would hold a gun. And she wouldn't be shooting at metal. And it wouldn't be bouncing back on her. She'd be shooting at the enemies, okay? She'd be shooting at the enemies. Like, that's it. That's all we're speaking about until we talk about Revelations 2. So I do give a point to Revelations 1 for horror. 2, puzzles, minigames, difficulty. There were puzzles. There were a few puzzles, actually. Nothing that's spectacular. Just those freaking click a few things and get it right. It looks kind of basically like the puzzles that were in the Saw game. And I do believe the second Saw game, it's more prevalent. It's kind of techno puzzles. Nothing spectacular. Nothing to write home about or anything worth mentioning. 3, backtracking, maps, locations. Honestly, there was no backtracking really. There was kind of a sort of backtrack when you played a different character and a different thing and whatnot. There's also a flashback that I didn't really talk much about because it really doesn't mean anything. It's just to set foundation for Parker to be more of a red herring, kind of, and basically tells you that Ramon is someone that you shouldn't trust, especially since they kind of showed us that he didn't die and didn't get killed, like he just got up. Like, they literally showed us. They didn't have to show us that. They showed us Ramon getting shot and doing this whole death scene, and then in the next second he got up. Like, am I watching an episode of Monk right now? Why are you showing us he got up? You basically just told us Parker's not the enemy. Whatever. There was no backtracking. I don't give it a point for that. Tyrants, bosses, mini bosses, optional bosses. I don't think there was any optional bosses. I think you had to kill everything. I can't remember if you had to just escape Rachel or kill her, but I do believe I killed her. And killed her dead I did, because she was pretty strong and she was annoying and she was quick. But I don't think that the enemies were necessarily that bad. There weren't that many bosses, but I can give this game a point merely for the fact that Norman is the hardest boss to defeat in Resident Evil. If you think I'm not telling the truth or you think I'm wrong, please comment down below and tell me what boss is the hardest to defeat in Resident Evil history. You can use any Resident Evil game from Resident Evil 0 to Resident Evil 8 and anything in between. 5, different perspectives. There were 3 different perspectives and 1 different perspective that we didn't even play as. So yeah, that gets a point. 6, zombies, viruses, BOWs. The enemies were strange looking and goofy, not that much variety. There were ones that shot stuff at you. There were big old huge behemoths. There were small ones that exploded when they got too close. There were the dogs in the ice. The officer, Mayday, Mayday, officer. That was so funny, so hilarious. I hate the fact that there's other enemies that look like him because he should have been one of a kind. If not, maybe a little different than them. Maybe have something else that makes them different, something that distinguishes them. But as you go on, you see other characters that look just like him and do the same thing. And maybe they're a little smaller, maybe, but I really don't think so. I think they're the same size. I give a point to them for that. They have a pretty decent amount. The enemies kind of look very similar, but they're the same. They're from the same freaking virus. So what do you freaking expect? Everybody to look like freaking different? Like, don't get it twisted. There were kind of dog wolves or something in this game, but that was when we were playing as Keith and Quint. And I do believe freaking Chris and Jessica are out in the snow as well. And then I didn't even talk about this, but I just want to let you guys know they are misogynistic. Why is Jessica out there in the cold looking the way she do? Like, in the cold, you just make women look stupid, because men are going to sit there and think this is real. They're going to think it's real, a reality, and they're going to be like, oh, girls are stupid. They'd rather look cute than... And who they looking cute for? Who they looking cute for? Simping about getting a cold, getting freaking the flu because you want to simp for Chris. Unbelievable. If you want to know how misogynistic is Resident Evil, go to my Resident Evil playlist and I have a video on the misogyny and the racism. So go over there and check that out. We're not going to talk about that here. They get a point for that. 7. Corporations, anti-capitalism, umbrella, tricell, etc. Yeah, they have that in there. They got that in there. Yeah, freaking conspiracy and all that. Point. 8. Gameplay, controls, movement of enemies and weapons. Come to think of it, the only gun I can remember or recall in Revelations 1 is the Python gun. I think that was in the first ship that Jill and Parker were captured on. Again, I don't remember the ships, so go and look those ships up, or I'll have them in the description if I remember to put them down there. But the controls were fine. The controls were just over the shoulder, move around, twist around, circle. I think you could flip around. I love when you can move the camera and just flip on the other side because it's easy to get away from enemies instead of having to go and make a big old huge U-turn. Hate that. But I guess I could say there's a point for that. 9. Continuity. Does it fit in the story? It does. It fits better than Resident Evil 4. Please tell me what Resident Evil 4 has to do with anything that came before or after it. Tell me how it contributes. Like I said in my other video, the only thing we get from Resident Evil 4 is people knowing what Las Plagas is. And then Leon being like, hey, remember when I saved the president's daughter? Like, he could have said that without Resident Evil 4 even existing. To be quite honest, it wasn't anything that was notable to anything. And freaking Ashley Graham, my hypothesis that Ashley Graham was secretly Sherry Birkin goes out the window from Resident Evil 6. Like I said, just erase Resident Evil 6, forget that crap ever happened and start over. So that gets a point. And 10, overall story. Does it stand alone? I think it stands alone. I think this was a very cool, like I said, it's convoluted. The story is very convoluted, but what I will say is just the Jill aspect, if we took everybody's aspect out, I think the Jill aspect was really cool. I'm glad that she actually got some shine since Resident Evil 1 and 3, because it just seems like Jill was like, oh, I'm just obscured now. And like I said before, Capcom's reason for not having Jill in Resident Evil 6 was because they didn't want any marital banter between Jill and Chris. And that's the dumbest thing. They just didn't know how to write her in there. That's all they need to say. For some reason, they knew how to write Helena's, a character we've never seen before and don't care about, into a story. Try to appeal to pathos when her sister died in her arms, which I laughed at. Like, honestly, but she didn't know how to put a character that's already established. You don't have to do much to set no foundation for her because everyone knows who Jill is. You didn't know how to put her in there. Okay. Stop writing then. Quit your job. Go work somewhere else. Make tires. Freaking do something to contribute to society because you're not contributing to anything here. That's basically it. If I were to be truthful about this whole situation, I would give Revelations, I want to give Revelations an 8 out of 10, but I don't feel like that's very fair to the fact that it's a very convoluted story. At most, I would have to say this game gets a 6 out of 10, and I hope that that's not too scary to like deter people from actually playing the game. I do believe it stands good on its own, but it just sets the precipice. This one sets the precipice to make Revelations the female side piece that no one wants to touch. A way, basically, oh, stop complaining that Jill hasn't been here because she was in Revelations 1. Stop complaining that Claire has not been here. She was in Revelations 2. Oh, you guys can't complain anymore about Rebecca being absent because she's in Revelations 3. When no one cares about Revelations. No one gives a darn about Revelations. I think Revelations 2 has more to do with the dynamic of like pseudo women empowerment because like I said, Claire's damselized. I believe she's more damselized in this game and put at more of a disadvantage in this game than in Code Veronica, because at least in Code Veronica no one was slowing her down. At least Steve Burnside did something with some guns. At the very least he helped for like 2 seconds. But the only thing that freaking Moira does is pick up a stick and it breaks on impact. And with that being said, I'm going to end this video here. If you want to know my opinions about Revelations 2, part 2 is coming soon. Once it is here, it will be linked in the description. Go down below and we'll talk about Revelations 2. Also, check out my most recent video. Link is in the description to that one about Resident Evil Revelations 3, the leaks that came out, who's in it. Basically going into Revelations 3 and what we're going to have to contend with. I'm sure it's not going to have any connection to 1 or 2 because 2 didn't have any connection with 1. Oh wait, it does. It has one itty bitty tiny hairline width of a connection between Revelations 1. If you'd like to know what it is, tune in next time. See you guys in the next one.